briefly now.
Okay. All right.
Fekri Nada, Liberal Democrats, 5,484. Griffin Nicholas John, British National Party, 4,240. Poulsen Carl, the Conservative Party candidate, 15,868. I do declare that the said Constance Ann Cryer is duly elected to serve as Member of Parliament for the Keighley constituency.
So Ann Cryer, who fought quite a tough campaign here, outspoken about the Asian community's forced marriage policy where it happens, and was thought it might have dented her support, rather, because it's got a sizable Asian population. But she's a woman who speaks her mind. Majority of 4,852. Her previous majority was 4,000, so it's up a little bit. And her share of the vote,
and those of us who were involved in it,
45%, 43% for the Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats on 12,
I think tonight,
and Griffin for the BNP, the leader of the BNP, gets 9%. Swing to Labour from the Conservatives of 1%. Does that make sense to you, Tony?
It looks on the face of it, though it's hard to be certain, that quite a lot of votes that might otherwise have gone to the Tories went to the BNP. They will not be very happy, the Conservatives, about that speculation. It can't be more than a speculation. But notice that the BNP total, 9%, is pretty remarkable.
We go to Wales and Blaenau Gwent, where the independent Peter Law is standing against the Labour candidate, having objected to the imposition of an all-woman short list. And there have been some blazing rows down there in Blaenau Gwent. Safer seat in Wales, an Aaron Bevan, Michael Foot, but he said that the Labour candidate, Margaret Jones, had been given to the seat as if she was being given an earldom.
There is a history, incidentally, in South Wales of Labour candidates being turfed out
I will
and
firstly declare
fighting
the
seats
result in
successfully.
English. I will then proceed to declare the result in Welsh. I, the undersigned, being the acting returning officer at the election of a Member of Parliament for the Blaenau Gwent constituency held on the 5th day of May 2005, do hereby give notice that the number of votes recorded for each candidate at the said election is as follows. Jones Maggie Beryl, the Labour Party candidate, 11,384. Law Peter John, 20,505. Lee Philip James, Welsh Conservative Party candidate, 816. Osborne Peter Hill, UK Independence Party candidate, 192. Price Norman John, Plaid Cymru, the Party of Wales, 843. Thomas Bryan, Liberal Democrats, 1,511. The number of ballot papers
Well, that's one in the eye for Labour, isn't
That's
it?
an absolutely astonishing result. I mean, talk about local politics, but that... this is a classic case of the local party simply being furious about somebody being foisted on them. There was an issue of all-women shortlists here. And the winning man, well-known locally, councillor and all the rest of it. Even so, what an astonishing red on red, I don't know what you'd call it.
But Maggie Jones was a good candidate for Labour. It
She
wasn't
was a
as if
good
they just sort of brought any old person in and said, we want a woman, we'll have a woman, we'll have a shortlist, and you'll have her.
One of the things we should be very clear about by now is that people don't like being pushed around. After all, Labour centrally decided that somebody called Frank Dodson, I seem to recall, was to be the Labour candidate in London.
Absolutely right.
In fact, a lot of good that did them.
Sure.
Parties have to be very careful about treading on local toes.
We've got Ilford North declaring.
Is that the number of votes recorded for each candidate at the election is as follows. Cross, Andrew Jeffrey, 902. Gayler, Mark Adrian, 5,896.
That's the Liberal Democrats.
Levin Martin, 293. Perham Linda,
Labour.
17,128. Scott Lee,
Conservative.
18,781.
So it's a Conservative gain in Ilford North. As you were saying, Tony, the kind of seat that the Tories wanted to take.
Well, and they only needed a swing of about 2.5%. That's below the average for London, and they've achieved it easily.
Well, we'll see what their swing is. 4.6%. Here's the figures. Majority of 1,600 for Lee Scott,
Mr.
the
Mayor,
Conservatives.
Leader of Council.
Labour pushed into second
I would
place.
also
Linda
like to
Perham,
start by thanking
17,128.
all of electoral staff.
61% turnout, up a little bit from last time. There's the share.
Well, I wasn't sure I'd ever be standing here.
Labour down 6 percentage points and the Conservatives up 3%, a swing from Labour to Conservatives of 5%. Peter.
Well, David, Ilford North, there it is on our old house picture of Blair's battleground. These are the 80 key seats Mr. Blair has to hold on to as many as he can of. There's Ilford North. Let's see what's happened in these seats so far. These are the results in. Ilford North's gone blue, as you can see. There is Peterborough blue, there is Putney blue. Quite a lot of blue out here, up here we can expect to see. And one or two others. There's the Western Isles. North Wolverhampton South West just been held by Labour, even as we watch. So holding the safer seats, losing the more vulnerable seats. Let's have a look at our forecast now in this crucial battleground area. 80 seats, 80 red seats in the old Parliament. My goodness me, it looked like more than half of them are going down to the other side. Let's just bunch them all together. This is our forecast. This is our forecast based on the results we have in so far. Tories taking some 29 of them. The Liberal Democrats taking about 10 or so there. And sorry, say that again. There we have all these seats here remaining with Labour. There's Blaenau Gwent up there. Sorry, someone just reminded me. Blaenau Gwent, of course, has gone to an independent. And here we have the Labour Party surviving in something like half its battleground. And the majority then forecast 76 Labour, going up a little bit now. They've gone up a little bit. The swings shifting slightly more in their direction. Labour majority of 76. It may change more during the night, David.
Peter, thank you very much indeed. Labour majority says it may change more during the night. What do you think?
It's one of the things, again, that's very striking about this election is that Labour is doing very well in London with very large swings. We see them taking Putney to begin with, most recently Ilford North. But what do we see in the West Midlands and in the north of England? Labour doing much better.
Martha Carney has got Alistair Campbell with her at Sedgefield. Martha, over to you.
Yes, the former Director of Communications at Downing Street, but back in his old role, at least temporarily during the campaign. Now, as I recall, one of the Conservative posters said, "Wipe the smile off Tony Blair's face." Do you think that's what voters have done this evening?
Well, I think it's... I can remember doing an interview as a journalist in 1992 when Labour lost the election. Commentators then saying that the Labour Party was dead and buried. And Tony Blair and the Labour Party have had 2 landslide victories and what now looks like a fairly good win.
Well, it's certainly not another landslide.
It certainly isn't. No, I mean, what I think what's happened is that the country has decided it wants a Labour government back with a reduced majority, and that's what appears to be happening. But, you know, Tony Blair he's the first Labour leader in history to lead the party to 3 successive victories. And, look, I've got a lot of friends who would have seemed to be losing their seats tonight. Nobody likes to see that happen. But the fact is that the Labour Party has changed the political landscape in this country, which is why the Conservatives remain flat on their backs.
But the political landscape will also have been changed by the fact of you having a much smaller majority, and you're going to have to change quite a lot about the things that you operate. And for a start, can this third term really be unremittingly New Labour?
Look, the Labour Party has been elected on, if the predictions are correct, on a manifesto platform that's been set out, which you've no doubt read and seen and studied the detail, and that's the programme for government the Labour Party will take forward.
It's going to be much harder with a smaller majority, isn't it? Given the size of rebellions that we've seen in the past 2 terms.
But also, if you look back through the history of 20th century politics, very, very large majorities are the exception and not the norm. And people have got used to the idea that Labour, since Tony Blair became leader, just deliver landslide victories. If these predictions are correct, then the Labour Party has won 3 successive terms. It is a phenomenal achievement. And the other big political story, as I say, is the Conservative Party is flatlining. They have not changed, they've not reformed, and the public has rejected them again.
But in terms of what you're likely to do, or what Tony Blair is likely to do in the third term, are we going to see a change in the style of government, away from sofa government, a reliance on people like yourselves, unelected advisors? I mean, people in the Cabinet have been saying to me tonight, you've campaigned as a team, let's govern as a team.
I think that's absolutely right, and I think that one of the real strengths of the campaign has been that sense of a team, against Michael Howard presenting himself pretty much as a one-man band. And
so
look,
were mistakes made in the past about a too presidential style of politics?
Look, I think this so-called presidential stuff is actually driven by the fact that there is massive, relentless focus on the leaders, and if you're the Prime Minister, the biggest share of that focus falls upon you. And I think you can look at this in all sorts of different ways. Tony's probably had more stuff thrown at him than any politician in recent history. He's still standing, it looks like he's still the Prime Minister, and will carry on doing a very good job for this country.
And just finally, doesn't this mean he's going to rely much more on Gordon Brown? I mean, you were instrumental in bringing Gordon Brown back into the forefront of the campaign.
Gordon was always going to be in the forefront of the campaign. As Tony has said dozens and dozens of times, he's probably the greatest Chancellor that this country, certainly in our lifetime, that we've ever known. And the idea that Tony and Gordon are not the foundation of New Labour and the foundation of the success of the government, they are, and they've been working together well in this campaign, and got no doubt will do so in a third Labour term.
We'll wait and see. Alistair Campbell, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.
This is what the victor in Blaenau Gwent against the official Labour candidate Peter Law, the Independent, said when his victory came through. Remember, he had a majority of nearly 10,000, 9,000 and a bit. Here he is.
It's a very good morning in Blaenau Gwent this morning, right? And this is what you get when you don't listen to the people. And that's the point about the results here tonight, because it's been a great victory for the people of Blaenau Gwent, because they've stood up and said that our integrity is worth far more than it was judged to be by others. And that's what this issue has been about. We are not here to be manipulated and told what to do. And that's why I pay great tribute to the people of this wonderful constituency who have stood up for their integrity and their actual rights to say that we have far more than we should be giving away because we have been taken for granted. And that's why it's so important, because our integrity, our dignity, our self-respect is so important. And that's why this is a terrific victory for the people of Blaenau Gwent. And I have to say, I stand here this morning very proud and very humbled to be the Member of Parliament for this great constituency. Such a wonderful constituency, where we have values that people don't really understand in other places, and where we have great traditions. And I want to serve the people in the way that I always have, working for them and caring for them, because that's always been my approach and my style. And that's what I'll be doing to improve the quality of life on a day-to-day basis for today's
Blaenau Gwent,
generation.
and there is Tony Blair at his count. Looking rather serious or considered. Clearly not exuberant, as we were saying a moment ago about the figures that are coming in at the moment.
The contrast with 1997 is remarkable.
The contrast with yesterday is pretty amazing, isn't it?
It is, though. The Labour Party has just held Dover, which they'll be very pleased about. That was quite high on the target list.
Let's have the result from Ceredigion, and then I hope we might be able to speak to Ian Duncan Smith, with a bit of luck. This is a Liberal Democrat gain from Plaid Cymru, with a majority of 219. And there's the result, and the change or the share rather, 37% for Liberal Democrats, up 10%, Plaid Cymru down 2, Conservatives down 7.
A speaker...
Swing from Plaid Cymru to the Liberal Democrats. Well, we've got various swings. Let's join Ian Duncan Smith for a moment while we sort things out here. He's at Chingford. Mr. Duncan Smith, could it be you then tonight leading the party to this, not victory, but at least restoring its position?
Well, it could have been, but it isn't, and I'm happy that here in Chingford and Woodford Green we've seen an increase in the vote and an increase in the majority. But also, I think, certainly I did a lot of touring around marginal seats, and I was always pretty certain that London would do very well for us. And I think, judging by some of the figures, although it's early days, that I'm pleased to see that we are doing better in London.
I'll come back to you in a moment. We've got Sedgefield declaring, Mr. Duncan.
The election is as follows. Bernie Ann Abraham,
Independent.
209. John Barker, alias John Bradfield,
Independent.
45. Anthony Charles Linton Blair,
Labour.
24,421. Shiri Blair-out Gillam, 82. Julian Fraser Brennan, 17.
We want our country back.
William John Brown, 646. Robert Woodthorpe Brown,
Liberal Democrats.
4,935. Jonathan McQueen Corburn,
The Blair Must Go Party.
103. Mark Neville Farrell,
National Front, Britain for the British.
Helen John,
Independent.
68. Reginald Thomas Keyes,
Independent.
4,252.
Reg Keyes, his son was killed in Iraq and stood here against the war.
Alan John Lockwood,
Conservative Party.
5,972. Fiona Christina Luckhurst Matthews,
Veritas.
218. Terence William Pattinson,
Senior Citizens Party.
97. Melody Elizabeth Staniforth,
Monster Raving Loony.
157. And I declare that Anthony Charles Linton Blair has been duly elected to serve as member for the Sedgefield constituency.
Tony Blair attracting 15 candidates in all as Prime Minister to that seat, and Reg Keyes getting 4,252, the man who was standing against the Iraq war. We'll have the full figures in a moment, but let's just hear Tony Blair.
Hard here today. Thank you very much indeed, all of you. Can I also say a special word of thanks to the police and the security here? For obvious reasons, it's been a little heavier than usual, but I'd like to thank them very much. I know they've given up their evening to come here and look after us. Thank you. And thank you most especially to the people of the Sedgefield constituency for re-electing me as your Member of Parliament. I'm proud to serve you. You've always been loyal and good and true to me. And I will do my best in this term of Parliament for Sedgefield, for this constituency, for the people in it. If, and I say if, the predictions are right, it also looks as if the Labour Party is heading for the first time in its history for an historic third term. It's not yet clear, obviously, what the majority is. It seems as if it's clear, but also that the British people wanted the return of a Labour government, but with a reduced majority. And we have to respond to that sensibly and wisely and responsibly. We have to make sure that we focus on the things that matter to people, the things that they've talked about to me during the course of this campaign. Jobs and living standards and the National Health Service and schools and law and order. And the problems that we have in some of our communities, where still far too many young people find it hard to get on in life. Far too many young couples find it hard to own their own homes. People worry about disrespect on the street and law and order in their communities. So we have to respond to those things. And I know too that Iraq has been a divisive issue in this country. But I hope now that we can unite again and look to the future, there and here. I would also like to say that this constituency of Sedgefield is what I'm not merely proud to represent, but proud to show people as a place where real change has happened over these past years. I'm delighted that the majority I've received this evening is actually an increase in the majority in 2001. And I like to think that that is in part due to the fact that in this constituency there are more jobs, there are higher living standards, there is investment in schools and in hospitals and in extra police, and that people in Sedgefield genuinely believed that this government is trying to be a government delivering for them. I would like to thank people again here tonight. I'd also like to thank my wife Cherie and my family who've stood by me so well and given me such support, and my party supporters and members here, John Burton, my agent, and all his team. It's not always easy for them, but they do a fantastic job. And sometimes I don't think they know just how grateful I am to them. So many thanks indeed for re-electing me again this evening. If it is correct and we are returned to government, thank you for that also. Our job is to serve people. It's what I've tried to do in Sedgefield. It's what we'll try to do for the country. Thank you.
Tony Blair, the Prime Minister at his count in Sedgefield, looking rather battered, Andrew.
Well, the reverse of triumphalist. I thought his words very, very interesting, acknowledging that people wanted a reduced majority. We have to respond to that sensibly and wisely, and acknowledging openly the extreme damage that Iraq and the war and the issue of trust has done to this government. Same message, you know, Gordon Brown, we'll listen, we'll learn. Robin Cook, we must listen soberly and seriously. If they are re-elected tonight, as we assume, this is not a Labour government that is going to behave, they say, as they have been behaving in the past.
And is it too early for you to say whether you think he'll stay the so-called full term? I mean, do you think this is...
I think on these numbers he probably won't. I can't say when he'd decide to go, but I think the pressure inside the Parliamentary Labour Party for a transition at some point during the next government will be quite strong. And I think whoever takes over, we assume it's Gordon Brown, is going to need time to kind of reshape the politics of the Labour Party.
Yet there is an irony in all this. The Labour majority at the moment we're projecting is going to be 80. Had Labour come in with a majority of 88 years ago, when Tony Blair first became Prime Minister, they would have been over the moon. 80 is now thought of as a defeat. Once upon a time, it would have been a huge victory.
But it's all rhythm and it's all movement, isn't it, Tony?
Absolutely.
I mean, we just heard the Liberal Democrats have indeed taken Manchester Withington, another astonishing result, and I think Wimbledon as well.
And Birmingham Yardley, and the Conservatives have gained Wimbledon from Labour.
Yeah.
Let's
on a huge swing.
On a huge swing. We'll have some of those results. First of all, Birmingham Yardley, Liberal Democrat gain from Labour. John Hemming was the Liberal who, not as an employee of Rover, but from outside, put together the four men who made the Phoenix Consortium to try and save Rover. And he stood here and has got 2,672 majority, putting Labour into second place, Jane Innes. There's the swing from Labour to Liberal Democrats, 9%. And Cardiff Central, Liberal Democrat gain from Labour. Majority of 5,593, swing of 9% from Labour to the Conservatives in central Cardiff, with all the arguments there about tuition fees and the rest of it. He was a former junior minister. And one more, Wimbledon I think we can have. Conservatives gain Wimbledon from Labour, straight fight, and a big swing put Stephen Hammond in. Defeats Roger Casale, 41%, 36%, 18% and 5%. And I don't think we do have the swing. Can you work out the swing? The swing's gone.
The swing is about 7%.
How much?
7%.
7%.
It's very
Good.
substantial.
Right. Ian Duncan-Smith, thank you very much for hanging on. You heard what Mr. Blair said. What do you think the future of the Labour government is, and what do you think the future of your own party is?
Well, I think the lessons for Labour from this election have to be that, you know, they just can't do things and then tell people one thing and do another. I think what's really damaged Labour, and certainly on the streets here in London you'll see it, is the sense that they don't tell the truth, they're not trustworthy anymore, and that he himself has lost huge amounts of credibility. Now, to bring that back, they're going to have to go very hard to demonstrate they're an open government that actually will, you know, do the right thing, but do it for the right reasons and not try and spin and deceive people in the way they've been doing over the last 2 terms.
Are you surprised that the Conservative message, though, which was so confident, those 8 points or whatever it was about things people didn't like, that hasn't worked? And despite Michael Howard calling Tony Blair a liar, clearly people, even though with a reduced majority, are prepared to see Tony Blair back as Prime Minister.
Well, we've always had a big mountain to climb, and I would like to think that, I haven't seen all the figures, that we've made a real start at it now, and I think there's no question that what lies ahead of us is a process of building to make sure that this, if it is, as predicted, a reduced majority, can be used to our advantage. I think there are real problems ahead in the economy. The one thing that none of you have really tackled, if you don't mind me saying so, is the real problems for Gordon Brown over the black hole in pensions, and that I think is going to haunt them over the next 3 to 4 years, and there are real signs now this economy is beginning to go off, and it was the economy that sustained them, I think, through this election, and if that wobbles, which I believe it is, then I think the government, if it is the Labour government next, is going to be in real trouble. So it ain't over yet, and I think that tonight I hope we will see as a success for us, clearly not in government, but en route to it, I hope.
One other thing, you had a rough ride at the hands of the Conservative Party. Do you think Michael Howard will stay leader of the Conservative Party through to the next general election?
You know, I don't really mind who's leader. I hope Michael stays, and I hope and believe he should do. But the real point is it's not about, you know, which face is in front of the party. The key now is that the public wants to see the Conservative Party as a broad party that has the interests of some of those, the worst off in society, at its heart, as well as wanting to represent people who are very angry about issues, whether it be immigration, crime, and the failures of the government. So for the next 3-4 years, what the party must do is to broaden out and face the electorate with a real broad agenda, and I'm convinced that that's what we'll do.
Well, that's, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Not a particularly ringing endorsement. I don't mind who's leader, but anyway, there we are. Jeremy.
Well, David, our panel has now been augmented by Paul Boateng, Lord Strathclyde and Lord Newby of the Liberal Democrats. Lord Strathclyde, however you cut it, 3rd consecutive Tory defeat. Once the natural party of government.
Well, if that is what this evening turns out to be, of course, that will be a great pity for us, Conservative Party, Michael Howard, perhaps even for the country. But remember, this is, if it is also a Labour victory, it's not going to be a victory built on any affection for the Labour Party. It will be a loveless victory. It will be a majority on the smallest share of the vote ever, which will raise enormous questions about legitimacy. Depending on the size of the majority, it will...
It's a ringing endorsement. How can it be anything else? A majority predicted to be in the region of between 75 and 80.
Well, that's what it is predicted to be at the moment. But look at these seats that we are winning. We're doing well in London, we're doing well in Essex, in North Kent. I predict we will do well in north of London, in Bedfordshire, and Hertfordshire, and constituencies that we have
The point is, as you've already pointed out, it is a record small share of the vote, or predicted to be so. That is indicative not of any affection for you, but of some problem with the government, notably, I imagine, over its handling of the war. Would you accept that, Paul Boateng?
I would accept that Iraq has undoubtedly been an issue. What's clear, however, is that we are certainly moving towards a 3rd historic term. A clear mandate to deliver our manifesto, but also I think we're seeing some regional variations that are worth examining. I mean, I've been campaigning in Wales, in the Midlands, in London and the South East, and it's clear that we are doing better in the north than we are in the South East. Clear, too, that politics has changed, and as I got round the country, I felt in different seats there were campaigns being run where local issues were much more significant, where people were paying a lot of attention to local candidates.
And you have not emerged from this as the real alternative either, have you?
Well, we picked up the vast bulk of the benefit from the fall in the Labour vote. Probably 3/4 of that benefit goes to the Liberal Democrats rather than the Conservatives, who are, as of tonight, the official opposition.
Yeah,
and
but
we've
look at
also
the people you targeted. Oliver Letwin says he thinks he's won. We don't know for sure yet. You try to get rid of Theresa May, you failed. I mean, you can't count this as any kind of achievement very much.
Oh, we'll count it as a very major achievement because we're picking up seats in all the big cities: Bristol, Cardiff, Manchester, hopefully in Leeds, elsewhere. The idea that the Lib Dem campaign's been built around 4 or 5 high-profile Conservatives is just false. It makes good news for you, but it's not where we put the bulk of our resources, and we're seeing benefits now up and down the country.
Been a main part of their campaign, hasn't it?
Just not true.
What do you mean?
Just not true that it's been the main part of our campaign.
The decapitation strategy didn't exist?
We want to win as many seats as we can,
Well, of
and
course
some
you
of
do.
those
Everybody
seats,
does.
some of those seats had relatively small Conservative majorities, so we wanted to win them. We may not win them all, but we're winning other seats as well.
What you did tell people, however, was that they could afford to vote Lib Dem without their letting in a Conservative. In fact, if you take Wimbledon, for example, that is precisely what happened. A significant number of Labour
Plenty of
people
other places
voted
plenty of other
Lib
places
Dem,
it did
and they got a
happen.
Conservative MP.
David Dimbleby.
Thank you, Jeremy Paxman.
Get on with it.
This new formality in the studio. 1997, were you up for Portillo? You remember that moment when Stephen Twigg took Enfield Southgate, and you saw him at the count rolling his eyes with pleasure.
Okay.
Now have a look at him at Enfield Southgate, which we can't do because we've got our reporter there, David Thompson. I was just watching his face a moment ago. It's he looks very gloomy. David, just tell us what's going on in Enfield Southgate.
Well, the Tories are calling it. They say they've won it. We haven't had the official declaration yet, obviously. We're some minutes away from that. But I'm told that the Tories have won it. This was the iconic, if you remember, this was the seat that gave us all big memories of the 1997 election win for New Labour. Were you up for Portillo? All of that. Well, Stephen Twigg won it then. He held it in 2001. Looks very much like he's lost it now. The Tories are saying this is a huge victory for them. They think margin of victory maybe about sort of over 1,000 or so, and they're delighted. Huge whoops around the hall when they had the final count. As I say, haven't had the declaration yet, but that's what it's looking like. Big win for Labour, for the Tories here.
Thanks, David, very much. Andrew, we're just going to go to Peter Snow before we do.
We're told that Labour press officers are saying that Una King has lost to George Galloway down in Bethnal Green and Bow, which would be another sensational result, obviously.
It was thought at one point that Ruth Kelly might be in difficulty in Bolton West. Oh, there is Stephen Twigg at the count.
Stephen Twigg, a minister, of course, quite an important schools minister in the Department for Education and Skills, not just any old Labour backbench MP.
Okay.
Well, it's a reversal for him. Be interesting to hear Michael Portillo on that face, having suffered the same fate himself. Bolton West, let's just have that, then we'll go to Peter Snow. Bolton West, Ruth Kelly, Education, Secretary of State for Education, 36 years old, 5 children, 4 of them born since she went into Parliament, and her majority 2,064 in Bolton West. Turnout up a bit, her majority down 3,500 from where it was, and this is the change. Down 5% for Labour, up 4% for the Conservatives, Liberal Democrats down 1% in Bolton West, a swing to the Conservatives of 4%. So, Peter.
David, what a three-way battle this is. Quite extraordinary. Here's our three-way battleground. We've put the 3 parties on our battleground here, and the closer they are to the lines between them, which are the battlefronts, the more vulnerable those MPs are. So each party, as you can see, faces 2 battlefronts, and the nearer they are to those fronts, the lower their majorities, the more vulnerable they are. Now, here we are. This is what we have so far. Here's the Labour Party, the largest party, being infiltrated by Liberal Democrats and Tories over there. Tony Blair's seat in Sedgefield, of course, quite comfortably safe. But look what's happening in other seats. There is Manchester Wythenshawe, a swing of 27% there to the Liberal Democrats, deep inside Labour heartland there. And all the way around, we get more and more interesting seats. There's Barbara Roach's seat there, Hornsey and Wood Green in London. She's gone down to the Liberal Democrats too. So let's look now at our forecast. Let's fill in all the other seats. This is the way we think it's going to look at the end of the day. Labour, still the biggest party, no question about that over here. But look at the inroads the Tories look like making across that key battlefront there. Those marginal Conservative and Labour MPs there. The Tories on the move. Now, shift around to the Tories' other battlefront with the Liberal Democrats. Here, they're doing rather well as well. The Tories vote holding up in those key seats that the Liberal Democrats desperately hoped they would gain. There's one Tory going down there, changing colour to, as you can see, gold there. Otherwise, it's the Tories on the move. Swing round now to the Liberal Democrats' other battlefront, the one with the Labour Party. And look how interesting this is. There's Cardiff Central, the nearest one of all to the battlefront, going down there. Hornsey and Wood Green I've mentioned already. So look now how vulnerable someone like Charles Clarke, the Home Secretary, is. He's back there with a majority of some 9,000, but he's in amongst some defeated Labour MPs even now. So even his seat must be in question with the way the Liberal Democrats are pulling the Labour Party towards them in that particular sector of the battle, David.
Peter, thank you very much. And there's the outside of the BBC Television Centre with the results piling up. 219 for Labour, 37 in for the Conservatives at the moment. Many safe Labour seats come in first. Liberal Democrats on 23, 324 to win. The Liberal Democrats have gained Rochdale in Greater Manchester from Labour. This was 36 on their target. And at that point, we join Fiona Bruce for an overview from high up above us.
Yes, indeed.
On the way this election's going.
Up here from my eyrie, David, let me tell you, we've had 290 seats declared so far. We've got 356 to go. We're predicting a Labour majority of 72 seats. That's down from 160. So far, Labour's lost about a dozen seats, but Tony Blair is safely back at Westminster, easily holding Sedgefield. The Prime Minister acknowledged, though, that Iraq had been a divisive issue. He said the message from the electorate was obvious.
It's not yet clear, obviously, what the majority is. It seems as if it's clear, but also that the British people wanted the return of a Labour government, but with a reduced majority. And we have to respond to that sensibly and wisely.
The Conservatives have made gains from both the other parties. They've taken Wimbledon from Labour, also Peterborough, with a swing of 7%, and they took Newbury from the Liberal Democrats. The first Tory gain of the night came in Putney in south-west London, where Justin Greening overturned Labour's majority with a swing of 6.5%. The Liberal Democrats have made half a dozen gains from Labour. They captured Hornsey with a swing of 15%, overturning a 10,000 majority, and gained Ceredigion and Cardiff Central in Wales. In Scotland, they've taken Dunbartonshire East with a swing from Labour of more than 7%. Now, one of the biggest shocks of the evening has come in Blaenau Gwent, where an independent Labour candidate has taken what was one of the safest seats in Britain from Labour. Peter Law won convincingly. He resigned from Labour after an all-women shortlist was imposed on the constituency. That's it, just for the moment. David.
Thanks very much, Fiona. We go over to Enfield Southgate. Stephen Twiggs, defence here. Well, while we wait for that, we're also waiting, of course, for a number of other important seats to come through. Michael Howard, leader of the Conservative Party in Folkestone Hythe. We're still waiting for the result of the battle, Bethnal Green and Bow. David Davis's result in Halton Price and Howden. There he is, waiting for his count to come through. It was reported that he'd improved his figure. The Prime Minister leaving his count. His majority up a bit, his share of the vote considerably down in Sedgefield. And if the Prime Minister does what he planned to do, he'll be coming down to London. We shall hear more from him after that rather interesting speech he made when winning the seat in Sedgefield. Rochdale, let's just have the figures for the Liberal Democrat gain from Labour in Rochdale. Paul Rowan, for the Liberal Democrats, takes it from Lorna Fitzsimons. Close run thing, majority 444. There's the change. Labour down 9 percentage points, the Liberal Democrats up 6 percentage points, a swing from Labour to the Liberal Democrats of 8%. Now we join Raggy Omer and hear a bit more about this battle that's going on in Bethnal Green and Bow. Raggy.
Well, it's looking ever increasingly likely here that Una King may lose her seat, because inexorably throughout the evening, although they started off quite bullish, the Labour spokesman on her behalf have said that although it was very, very close and at times too close to call, they have in the last half hour or so been briefing journalists here saying that she may have lost it. And councillors here and within the sort of Bangladeshi and Bengali community have said, and these are sort of off background sort of noises, that George Galloway may have won this by up to a couple of thousand votes. But again, the briefings from the Labour spokesman on behalf of Una King is that it's close, but they may have lost.
Raggy, thank you very much. We're going up to Holton Price and Howden, where David Davis is defending his
hereby
seat.
give notice
And here
that the
are
number
the figures.
of votes recorded for each candidate at the said election is as follows. David Michael Davies, the Conservative Party candidate, 22,792. Edward Alexander Hart, the Labour Party candidate, 6,104. Philip Anthony Lane, United Kingdom Independence Party, 659. Jonathan Patrick Mainprice, British National Party, 798. John Neal, Liberal Democrats, 17,676. And I do hereby declare that the said David Michael Davies is duly elected as Member of Parliament for the said constituency.
David Davis, Shadow Home Secretary, one of the people who had the Tories done very badly tonight, might have been thinking of his chances of becoming leader of the party. In these circumstances, perhaps may not happen. There's Tony Blair on the left of your screen, still at Sedgefield, and we'll hear David Davis now and show the figures as he speaks.
Election run smoothly and easily for all the candidates and everybody involved, so thank you for that. Can I also say thank you to my supporters, who have done a fantastic job in the last several weeks. It's invidious to pick out individuals, but I'm going to anyway. Sarah Rowe, my agent, Duncan and Helen Gilmore, who ran the campaign, and Councillor Andrew Percy, currently, I'm sure, winning Normanton for us on the other side of in his spare time. And, of course,
the election were as follows. David John Barrington Burrows,
going to Enfield Southgate for their
Party
result.
candidate, 18,830
Stephen
votes.
Twigg defending this.
Trevor Doughty, Green Party, 1,083 votes. Brian John Hall, UK Independence Party, 490 votes. Ziz Kakoulakis, Liberal Democrat, 4,724 votes. Stephen Twigg, the Labour candidate, 17,083 votes. The turnout was 66.44%, and I do hereby declare that David John Barrington Burrows is duly elected Member of Parliament for the constituency.
Stephen Twigg has been MP here since 1997 and is currently the Schools Minister, defeated in Enfield Southgate by David Burrows, who's lived in this constituency of Enfield all his life and who takes the seat with a majority of 1,747.
Well, were you up for Stephen Twigg? He looks very, very upset at this result. Labour are doing pretty poorly, I think, in a swathe of these London and indeed southern Essex, Kent seats, one after another. Conservatives doing very well indeed here.
The swing here from Labour to the Conservatives, 9%.
Good. Very large. But later on, I hope we'll have a chance to look at London, because quite clearly London is behaving differently from most of the rest of the country.
I think we do. Peter, we could have a look at London, couldn't we? If we ask nicely?
Yes, I've just pressed the right button for it, David, because here we have the whole country. Here you can see the gains flashing there. There's Newbury, you can see quite clearly there, a large chunk of blue flashing for Newbury. But the real excitement for the Tories is indeed in London. Let's just look close up at London. There it is. And here we have already 4 gains in London, including that hefty gate swing in Enfield Southgate. Let's see if I can point it out to you there. There's Enfield Southgate up there, up the top there, and there's Ilford North, and there's Wimbledon and Putney. All gains for the Tories. Let's have a look at the scoreboard so far in London then. Labour holding on to, of course, some. The swing in London, there it is. It's 5% to the Tories, rather more than most of the rest of the country, but this is where they need to be making the big swings. In London, the South East, that's where the Tories have to come back. Labour on 20, they're down 5, totally dominating London before. 10 the Tories, up 4, Lib Dems up 1, 3 altogether. They've won Hornsey and Wood Green, and the others no change. The forecast then, look at how the Tories are now almost halfway up after the Labour Party now. 43 down 12 the Labour Party, 23 up 10 the Tories, surging back in London. The Liberal Democrats up just 2 to make 8 seats in London. So there it is. And now we're going to see the forecast of the London seats. There they are, they're flashing away there. You're going to see an awful lot more blue flashing on that map by the end of the night. David.
Thanks, Peter. So, the beginning of a recovery. I mean, London is crucial. Without London, you can't form a government. You can't hold power, can you?
Ian Duncan Smith was saying earlier this evening that he had sensed that things were going the Conservatives' way in London. I must say I didn't talk to anybody throughout the campaign who thought that was happening. A lot of people are putting it down to the war, and that may have been important. But I have a strong sense that an awful lot of people in London think that while their incomes are going up, their standard of living is going up by that index, their standard of life is going down. Very grossly inflated house prices, great difficulty making a living if you're in the public sector, deteriorating public transport and so on. One has a sense of stress in London. I'm not a Londoner, but whenever I go into London, I'm very struck by the fact that life seems harder than it does for people in the rest of the country.
Is the economy stupid, Andrew, in London? Do you agree?
Well, it's the effect in some ways of a successful economy. That's where the congestion and the stress and the grit comes from, and the higher house prices and all the rest of it.
Do you go along with Tony's argument, or do you think it was the war?
No, I think the war has played a lot. London's, relatively radical on these matters, very mixed. A large middle-class protest vote in London as well, bigger than most other places.
But they are swinging to the Conservatives. They're not swinging to the Liberal Democrats in large numbers in London.
All right, gentlemen, let's hear now that we were talking about the war from a speech which happened at Sedgefield after the Prime Minister had spoken, and it's Reg Keyes, whose son was killed in Iraq and who stood there in protest against the war and got 10% of the vote in Sedgefield. Here's Mr. Keyes.
I would also like to thank my wife and my son for being here with me tonight and who have supported me tirelessly through this campaign. A remarkable campaign. I don't claim to be a professional politician. Fighting this campaign has not been an easy task for me, but I had to do it for my son, Thomas Keyes, Royal Military Policeman, killed in Iraq 4 days short of his 21st birthday, sent to war under extremely controversial circumstances. Extremely controversial circumstances. If this war had been justified by international law, I would have grieved and not campaigned. If weapons of mass destruction had been found in Iraq, again, I would have grieved, not campaigned. Tonight there are lessons to be learned, and I hope in my heart that one day the Prime Minister may be able to say sorry, that one day he will say sorry to the families of the bereaved, and one day the Prime Minister might be able to visit wounded soldiers in hospital. Then our campaign will not have been in vain. And all the people who have given me their vote tonight send a clear, resounding message about the Iraq War. Thank you to all the people who have voted for me tonight. And just finally, I would like to dedicate this campaign to all the brave 88 British servicemen, because some people do not know how many have been killed. Servicemen who gave their young lives in this conflict. But may I just in particular mention, as they've come to be known, the six Royal Military policemen left behind and slaughtered in a filthy police station in Almajar. My son...
Reg Keys then talking at Sedgefield. We go to Leicester South for the declaration, which has just happened there.
120
Leicester South.
2,720.
This was taken by the Liberal Democrats in a by-election.
David Poe, the Socialist Labour Party, 315. Roseblade, Kenneth George, Barretta's Party leader Robert Roy Kilroy Silk, 573. Soulsby Peter Alford, the Labour Party candidate, 16,688.
Sir Peter Soulsby for Labour, taking this seat. It's theoretically a hold, in fact it's a win back from the Liberal Democrats in the by-election. And don't be confused by the Kilroy Silk, it's another Kilroy Silk of the same name, so to speak.
121.
So Labour win Leicester South. The Liberal Democrats, we haven't had Brent East, have we, the other Liberal Democrat take in a by-election? That's not surprising to you, this one?
This is not surprising. No. Sir Peter Soulsby is a very well-known local figure. This is a Labour seat.
His majority is down 9,000, nearly 10,000.
It is, that's true, but it's a seat they really ought to have taken and have done. They're in trouble in Harwich, which I'm not surprised by.
We have a declaration coming from Ochil and South Perthshire. Let's go there.
Maitland Kelly, Free Scotland Party, 183. Elizabeth Jane Smith, Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party, 10,021. Catherine Whittingham, Scottish Liberal Democrats, 6,218. There was a total of 72 spoilt ballot papers, and accordingly I declare that Gordon Raymond Banks has been duly elected to serve in Parliament as the member for the Ochil and South Perthshire constituency.
So Ochil and South Perthshire is held by Labour. And we go to Wyre Forest.
Bayliss, Mark Leslie, Labour, 10,716. Garnier, Mark Robert Timothy, Conservative, 13,489. Lee Rusty, UK Independence Party, 1,074.
Yes!
Oborski Francis Mary, Liberal Party, Focus, Save Our Hospital, 2,666. Priest Mark Phillip, commonly known as Bert, Official Monster Raving Loony Party, 303. And Taylor Richard Thomas, Independent Kidderminster Hospital and Health Concern, 18,739. And I do hereby declare that the said Richard Thomas
So Richard Taylor, who took this seat originally in the huge row about the Kidderminster Hospital in Wyre Forest, has held on to it.
2 independents in the new House of Commons then.
Adrian Childs is there. Adrian, what do you make of that result then?
Hello, yes, David. This
Mr.
was very
Acting,
very
Returning
close to
Officer,
call
ladies and gentlemen.
for a long time this
I didn't
evening.
realise
the Labour
until I
candidate
got here
decided it
tonight
was all over for him
how
quite
much
early,
I
but
wanted
the
to
Tories
retain
really did sniff
the
victory
enormous
here. It was a
privilege
Tory
that you
seat
gave me
before.
4 years ago
It was a Tory seat before.
It
was a Tory seat before 1997. It was a Labour for one term until the last election, where we had the most dramatic result of the last election, where Dr. Richard Taylor, the local consultant, came in with a 17,500 majority. But his vote actually collapsed in the borough elections of 2004, and there was the thought the Tories might get back in there. But he's actually got it today by a 5,000 majority. Rusty Lee, I'm sorry to report, finished in fourth place. I think you might remember her, the 80 chef. She was standing for UKIP, but the local party, the snappily named Kidderminster Hospital Health Concern Party, have held it by a majority of 5,000.
And Adrian, why is the UKIP candidate of special interest?
She was Rusty Lee. She was very famous in the, I think, nationwide, but certainly in the Midlands in the 80s when I was growing up round here. She's from Handsworth. I think she was the first person ever to bring Jamaican cooking to the masses. Very widely loved, and she's been flirting with most of the junior Tory helpers. I have to tell you, most of the evening.
Adrian, thank you very much indeed. Well, we go to Peter Snow. We'll come to you in a moment. Peter.
Well, David, we have gains flashing all over the place at the moment, but it is noticeable that they're mostly down in the southeastern London. We've got Ludlow up here, we've got Newbury, and we've got one or two up there at Peterborough, but London's the place where they're making the gains. And it's interesting that there is a really big regional variation in the swing. Here we have it. In the Midlands, just 2.9% of the Conservatives. This is a measure, in a sense, of the Tories' partial success, but failure to come back in the parts of the country that really would give them an overall majority. But I suppose they've always got next time. 2.9% the swing in the Midlands, not enough. 4.9, very nearly enough in London to bring huge numbers of marginals over to their side. And in the south, outside London, it's not so good as that, it's about 3%. And here we have in the north, where it doesn't matter so much to the Tories, just a 2.4% swing. So they're really fascinatingly within reach of a major step forward before the next election. David.
Peter, thanks very much. Tony, I'm curious about one thing. I've forgotten where the opinion polls were on this election up until yesterday when people started voting, compared with what actually is happening.
Well, I think this could be described as the election in which Andrew Marr was triumphantly vindicated. Why? Because he said right from the beginning of the campaign that we were going to see enormous regional differences, that we were going to see amazing differences from constituency to constituency. Now, our present forecast of the actual outcome in terms of share of the vote is Labour 37%, the Conservatives 33%, the Liberal Democrats 22%, and that is almost exactly in line with the opinion polls that were published within the last 48 hours or so.
Well,
there's nothing surprising about the shares of the vote. It's the way in which seats are behaving.
Well, there we've got 359 Labour, 199 Conservative, 59 Liberal Democrats, 29 others. That is our current forecast. Is that going to shift around much more, do you think? I mean, if Andrew is to be vindicated again, and one vindication is enough in a night. Maybe you should have 5 vindications like the Prime Minister.
No, let's not go there.
We won't go there. But could those actual figures change quite a lot, or do you think that's a fairly settled picture?
Oh, the range is narrowing gradually. I mean, the forecast, the viewer can't see it, but we see the constant little changes. But they are little now, and they're tending to narrow down. They're coming out at about a Labour majority of 70.
Let's just see the share, 37%, 33%, 22%, 8%.
That's almost exactly in line with the polls.
Yeah,
exactly.
and how, with the news, incidentally, that the Conservatives have gained Monmouth from Labour, the Welsh seat they were hoping to take, top Tory target, they've taken it. How does that figure, 37-33, how well is that reflected in the balance of the MPs in the House of Commons?
Oh,
In other words, how
badly.
proportional are we on that basis?
Desperately badly. Desperately badly.
What should it be, in your view? I mean,
Peter Snow will show us later on exactly how that would work out if the percentage of seats in the House were the same as the percentage of votes. But the fact is that the Labour Party, with significantly less than 40% of the votes, is going to have almost certainly a very substantial majority in the House of Commons. The electoral system is working unfairly, if you like. Nobody did it. It's nobody's fault. It just happened. Is working very hard against the Conservatives as well as the Liberal Democrats and in Labour's favour.
OK. Let's join Jeremy.
Well, David, I'm joined now by Adam Refrier, who's the successful Conservative candidate in Windsor. Congratulations.
Thank you very much indeed. One moment.
Well, take your time.
Thank you very much. That was very tasty.
Very, very cool for a newly elected MP.
It's probably called stunned.
I mean, you can't be genuinely surprised.
I think it takes a little while for it to seep in, and it's just beginning to seep in now. So if I start throwing spasms, you'll understand why, I'm sure.
Is this a vindication of Michael Howard's claim that he was going to lead the party from the centre?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Is this a vindication of Michael Howard's claim that he was going to lead his party from the centre?
My. I'm a participant, and I don't think it's my role to be a commentator just yet. I'm delighted to have been elected. I'm looking forward to playing a part in the future, and I think I'll leave it to the commentators to comment on what may be going on around the country at the moment.
What do you expect to achieve?
As an MP, well, what I hope to achieve first and foremost is to make sure that I can deliver on those local priorities, those local things that people want to see, like controlling overdevelopment, which is wrecking our beautiful area, and I guess on the national level, if we can achieve power at some point in the near future, which I hope will be sooner rather than later, then to bring back a sense of pride in being British, in controlling immigration, in making sure that taxes are fairer and government waste is reduced.
How did you find that the promise to control immigration played on the doorsteps?
I think it went very well indeed, because that's definitely a top issue across the whole constituency and I guess the whole country that people are concerned about. So I would say it wasn't a question of playing, it was very, very effective. It was what people wanted to hear, it was what people wanted action on, and I'm glad that I was a member of a party that was bold enough, courageous enough, just to tackle that issue head on and to come up with some solutions.
Congratulations. Thanks for joining us. David.
Thank you very much.
Jeremy. We go to Brent East and join Emily Maitlis there. Emily, we heard that the Liberal Democrats lost their Leicester by-election gain. How do you think... Oh, hold on. We have to see Mr. Blair arriving at Trimdon. I'll come back to you in just a second, Emily. This is going on the traditional route down to Trimdon Labour Club. Martha, have you had a chance to speak to people around him, apart from, of course, Alistair Campbell, who we saw you with a moment ago?
Yes, they were all at the camp. We can see, I think, the pictures of the convoy arriving now at Trimdon Labour Club, which is traditionally where the Prime Minister comes. I think he normally has a pint of bitter in terms of celebrating the night's results. Whether the tone of celebration will be quite right.
We thought here he was looking rather... We thought here in the studio that he was looking rather grim-faced at the count. Is the mood rather grim?
Yes, well, we saw, I think one of your commentators described it as a Richter smile when he arrived at the count. In fact, I caught a glimpse of him watching some of the results privately, and he did look quite, sort of a cliche, but stony-faced. And I think that's because, however theoretically you may contemplate the loss of a number of seats, when you actually see some of the names on the list, I think it is something quite sober to contemplate. And now we can see the staff coming into the Trimdon Club before the Prime Minister. That's Baroness Sally Morgan there, one of the Prime Minister's key aides. And in terms of... she'll be a very important figure when the Prime Minister comes to come and contemplates the cabinet reshuffle.
Martha, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, there the Prime Minister goes in among friends at the Trimdon Labour Club. We go back to Emily at Brent East. Sarah Tether, one-term Tether. Is that what she's going to be, one-term Tether, or is she going to hold Brent East, do you think, after the by-election?
We could really do with one of Andy Marr's predictions here. It's very tense, a little bit tetchy. People are saying it's really too close to call. At the heart of this fight, as you said, two very feisty women. One, the Lib Dem, Sarah Tether, who gained this seat at the tender age of 29 with a massive 29% swing in a by-election 18 months ago. That was when passions over Iraq war were really at their highest, and she became something of a party pin-up when she did so. Her rival, her main rival this time round, is the Labour candidate Yasmin Qureshi, a self-confessed socialist, if you like, first-generation born immigrant from Pakistan, which may play well in a community where more than 50% of the voters are non-white, what they call here an ethnic majority. She would become the first female Muslim MP this country's ever seen, and she joins me now. Yasmin Qureshi, can you give us any indication of how you think it's gone?
Well, I think it's quite true that it is so close. Just don't know what's going to happen. I think there's been time when Sarah's been ahead, then I've been ahead. So it's a case of really waiting as to what happens.
If you can just see behind us, sorry to explain that this is the Brent South constituency. It's just been declared. This is Dawn Butler, who has just won the seat for Labour. We're waiting for Brent East. And tell us, the war has played a massive part of your campaign. You've distanced yourself from Tony Blair here. Was that the right move?
Well, I genuinely happen to be against the war, and I did not agree with the Prime Minister's decision to take us to war. And I think it was very important that people in Brent East knew where I stood on the war.
Yasmin Qureshi, we're 2 minutes away from a declaration here. We'll come back to you with news when we can, David.
Thank you very much. Let's go down to Guildford, join Gavin Esler.
Lavin Alice Victoria, commonly known as Victoria, Independent, 112. Milton Anne Francis, the Conservative Party candidate, 22,595. Morris John Pugh, the Peace Party, Non-Violence, Justice, Environment, 166. Klett John Michael, the Green Party, 811. And I do hereby declare that the said Anne Francis Milton is duly elected.
The Conservatives take Guildford from the Liberal Democrats. Majority was only 538 before, and it's only 347 now for the Conservatives. Here are the figures. Turnout 68%, which is up 5% or so from last time round.
Marginal seats turnout is significantly above turnout.
Who have been here for some considerable time. Thank you.
So the Conservative gain from Liberal Democrats in Guildford. Andrew.
We're seeing again the pattern, I think, that Tony, repaying the compliment, mentioned earlier on, where in a lot of these seats, the Conservatives are actually doing pretty well against the Liberal Democrats. Weston-super-Mare being another example which they've taken. But not all over the place. Tainbridge and Somerset and Frome has not changed hands, which means that we don't have Boris Johnson's father joining him in the House of Commons after all.
In Tainbridge, not
right.
Somerset. In Teignbridge.
Teignbridge.
Yes.
Teignbridge, whatever.
Stanley Johnson
however,
in second place there, and Liberal Democrats, on the other hand, have taken Leeds North West.
Leeds North West, a classic example of these sort of student academic type seats where the war has been a big issue, plus tuition fees. I think we'll see the same pattern in Cambridge as well.
There's the Leeds North West result. Majority of 1,877, 3% swing from Labour to Conservatives allow the Lib Dems to take Leeds North West. OK, we've got some more results which we'll have in just a moment, but we rejoin Jeremy.
Thank you, David. Well, I'm joined by the victor in Blaenau Gwent, Peter Law. What's the message? Can you hear me, Mr. Law?
I can indeed.
Oh,
yes.
excellent, good. What message are your constituents sending today?
Well, the message they're sending to Tony Blair is that our integrity is too important and we don't want to be taken for granted. And there's, you know, we want the right of choice here when it comes to picking a Labour Party candidate.
But the row was only about the nature of the way that the candidate was apparently imposed upon you. That's all it was about.
It was, yes, because, you know, we only picked an Iron Bevan and Michael Foot and Lau Smith, we couldn't be trusted to pick a candidate from an open shortlist and pick the best person on merit. But they had to put in an all-woman shortlist by positive discrimination. And the people resent that because they deserve far better from New Labour.
So when you get to the House of Commons, are you going to take the Labour whip, or are you going to vote consistently with the Labour Party, or what?
Well, no one's offered me any whip at all, but most of the time, because I am a left-wing person, I would more than likely follow a Labour government programme.
So what significance does your victory have, then?
Well, it's a blow from the people. The people have risen up and they've said that we don't want to be taken for granted. We want to see transparency. We want to see our right of choice here. And we believe in openness. And that's what we believe in. And the Labour Party slipped up on that. And they've gone from a 19,500 safest Labour seat in Wales to a 9,000 majority independent socialist.
So do you
and someone needs to start thinking about that very carefully.
Do you intend to continue and stand there at the next election as well?
Well, it's too early for me to say that at the moment. I know that I have the confidence of the people, and I respect them, and I work for them with sincerity and commitment. And that's the commitment I've always given.
And it was a 49% swing, apparently, in your seat. That must be some sort of record.
Well, it probably is, but doesn't it tell you something about how disillusioned these wonderful people are who've put successive Labour governments into power are because they were walked over and ignored? And that's the point.
But what is it they're disillusioned in? They're disillusioned with New Labour as a whole, or disillusioned simply with a particular selection mechanism?
Well, this is a symptom of New Labour. This is a symptom of New Labour because what's happening here is people are using the system to find people jobs through all-women shortlists, and it's not good enough. We wanted any woman, any man, and pick the best person on merit. And yet, if you go to Scotland, there are no all-women shortlists. And they can see this. It's transparent. People can see we've been used. And that's what they rose up about.
OK.
It's not good enough.
Peter Law, thank you very much for joining us. Congratulations. David. Thank you.
I'm joined by the new husband and wife team in the House of Commons. Yvette Cooper's there already and has been a minister, indeed is a minister. Ed Balls, who's been Gordon Brown's advisor, close advisor at the Treasury, has won for the first time his seat in Normanton. Well, there the two of you are. Are you pleased by this result tonight, which, of course, though it may dismay the Blairites, will please the Brownites, because it hastens the day when your man will be Prime Minister?
Well, I don't think that's the case. I think what we've seen is a lot of support, certainly in Normanton and in Pontefract and Castleford, for a Labour government. The Normanton majority, I think, has increased. And certainly the Labour vote in Pontefract and Castleford has stayed very strong, and I think that actually reflects the benefits that a Labour government has delivered to these two constituencies in former coalfield areas.
All right, Ed Balls, what do you make of the... Congratulations on your victory, by the way. What do you make of the result for the Prime Minister, who we're just seeing in Trimdon Labour Club at the moment, having cheered up a bit from what he looked like at his count, I have to say?
Well, thanks very much indeed. It's very good news here that it looks like we're set to have 4 Labour MPs elected for the Wakefield district, which is very good news. I'm very proud to be elected as a Normanton MP to take over from Bill O'Brien with a slightly larger majority, but also a rise in turnout, which is really good news for politics in our area. All around the country, we seem to have quite different results in different seats, with some very good news. For example, in Elmet, just around the corner, where Colin Berger's done really well to increase his majority, but also some real disappointments like in Shipley and in Leeds North West. I think it's too early yet to discern a common pattern, other than the fact that in some seats it seems that there has been a protest vote, shifting votes from Labour to the Liberal Democrats. But we'll need to look at this in detail and see what lessons which need to be learned in the cold light of day.
Well, what lessons would you learn? Because you were at the heart of government in the sense of being Gordon Brown's closest advisor. Prime Minister says you've got to listen to the people. What are you hearing?
Well, of course we've got to listen and learn. I went to many marginal seats as well as campaigning here in Normanton, and I heard people regularly say that we need to make sure that we engage more with the party. We've got more to do to make sure we build up our membership and our bank of activists. We need to make sure that we're clear about the dividing lines.
This is the small beer of Labour Party politicking. I'm talking about the country as a whole. I mean, that's what your job is if you're in government.
I think we need
not
to be
to get up
clear.
the Labour Party membership.
I think we need to be clear. The question you asked me, David, was what lessons we have to learn. That's one of them, that we need to make sure that we renew the party, but also that we're clear to the British people year by year throughout the term what the dividing lines are between us and our opponents. And we need to be clearer about that maybe than we have been in the past. And then in this campaign we've seen a number of areas, like on cannabis, on Iraq, where the party leadership was very clear about the lessons we need to learn, for example.
Okay,
about,
thank you very
the
much.
publication of the legal advice.
Thanks for joining us. I have to leave you to go to your Prime Minister, but thank you very much for joining us, the two of you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you, all of you who've been working in the constituency so hard over these past few weeks. I know you've done an amazing job. It's been difficult sometimes in these past few weeks.
Thank you.
And I know you've
Thank you
had
very much.
quite a lot to put up with here. It's been a slightly different election from most elections. But as John said, the team has been just unbelievable. And I feel so proud to have increased my majority. Except, I have to say, I think it's really down to you guys who've done it. And I know John as well, he's put in so much work, and he's become a big star on foreign media, basically, since they've all been following him around on the campaign trail. But he's big in Belgium. We won't go into that. But it's been an amazing few weeks, and we haven't got all the results in, obviously, yet. But it looks as if we will actually have an historic third-term Labour victory. And I know that there are lots of lessons to learn, but I do feel very proud of the fact that we've managed that historic third-term victory. And I feel proud too, not just of the changes we have made, but of what we can now do with this mandate. Because one thing is for sure, the Conservative Party, people did not want back. And we managed, in the course of this campaign, despite everything that was thrown at us, despite all the problems, we set out an agenda for change in this country, and we're now going to take that agenda forward. For our economy and jobs and living standards, for our National Health Service and our schools, to give our young people the chance they need in life, on law and order, on bringing back community policing, on making sure we give affordable childcare to people, on reshaping our public services and welfare state for the 21st century, making sure our economy, strong already, can compete in the new world. And I feel a real sense of enthusiasm for that agenda in the third term. When you look back and think where we were in 1992, some 13 years ago, when after the fourth election defeat in a row, people wrote off this party. There were people then who said, Labour can never win again. And if we've actually achieved victory this evening and have got a clear majority, as it seems that we have, that is a huge rebirth of our party. And we did it because we had the courage to change. We did it because we had the courage to take difficult decisions in government. And yes, of course, there will be disagreements and problems. There always are. But I think we can be very, very proud of what we have done. And I like to think now that we've got the chance, as a government, with all the experience behind us, but with all the dedication and commitment for the future in front of us, to make the changes this country wants to see. They want us to take the economy forward. They want us to complete the changes in the health service. They want to make sure that the investment they see in their schools is taken forward and rolled out across the whole country. They want us to continue to bring down crime, to put that visible uniform presence back on the street. They want us to deal with the new issues that are coming up, how young couples get their feet on the first rungs of the housing ladder, affordable childcare, pensions, making sure that we have, in this country, a decent, fair society combined with economic prosperity. Now that is what has happened over these past few years. For the first time, people have been able to vote for a progressive force in politics that combines sensible, tough economic policy with social compassion, with a conscience, with a belief in helping others. And that is what we've tried to do. That's the party we've tried to create. And it actually began here in Sedgefield. Here where we learnt that we had to reconnect with the lives of people. Here where we learnt that our values were fantastic and the values of the British people, but that we had to learn how to apply them in the modern world. And so, when I think now of what lies ahead of us, it's a tremendous challenge, but it's one we can respond to with an enormous amount of vigour and energy and determination. It's a great, great thing and a privilege and an honour when the country elects a government. To be elected once can be difficult, as we found. To be elected twice is something in consecutive terms of office this party never knew before. To be re-elected for a third time is very special. So it's a tremendous privilege and it's an honour. And let's make sure we use it now for the good of our country and the people in it. Thank you.
What do you make of that, Andrew? Looking ahead, rebirth of our party and a huge challenge. I mean, it is a third term.
It is a third term.
There's no doubt about it.
And in historic terms, he's got a very large majority, we think enough to do most of what a normal Prime Minister would wish to do. Not enough, I think, to do everything that he would wish to do. And you have to say, if you look at the overall pattern, there is no doubt that the Conservatives are beginning to come back. They are beginning their rebirth. You know, all the time we're watching seats fall into the Conservatives, Hammersmith, the Wrekin, all over the place. The Conservatives are on the way back, and Michael Howard is going to be able to say to his party, it started here. So it is not simply a story of Labour triumphing yet again. The really big question is what would have happened had it not been for the Iraq War. Had it not been for that, I think that Tony Blair would have been back with a vast majority.
Inimitable Sun, a kick in the balance.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I think the Sun gets it right.
Tony King, what do you think of this result? Because the popular vote in support of this government is quite low, isn't it, historically?
A moment ago we heard the Prime Minister perfectly naturally refer to the fact that the people had just re-elected a Labour government. At the moment, our projection is that Labour will get only 36% of the popular vote. Labour will therefore have an overall majority in the House of Commons on the back of the smallest share of the popular vote of any party since Britain became a democracy.
We go to Ross, Skye and Lochaber for Charles Kennedy's result.
Philip Andrew Anderson, United Kingdom Independence Party, 500 votes. Christine Mary Conniff, Scottish Labour Party, 4,851 votes. Maurice Grant, Independent, 184 votes. John Brian Philip Hodgson, Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party, 3,275 votes. David Jardine, Scottish Green Party, 1,097 votes. Charles Peter Kennedy, Scottish Liberal Democrats, 19,100 votes. Anne Elizabeth MacLeod, Scottish Socialist Party, 412 votes. Mary Euphemia Will, Scottish National Party, 3,119 votes. There were 48 spoiled papers. I declare that Charles Kennedy has been duly elected to serve as the Member of the United Kingdom Parliament for the constituency of Ross, Skye and Lochaber. Thank you.
Charles Kennedy, who has been the MP here for 22 years. Liberal Democrat leader, very safe Liberal Democrat seat. Let's hear it.
Very much indeed. And can I say to you and through you, on all our behalfs, all candidates in this parliamentary constituency, our gratitude to all those who have managed the process of local democracy and in deciding and carrying out the business of electing a local Member of Parliament. And I'm very privileged to be the recipient of this support. I will do my level best, as I have tried to do over the years, and it is a new challenge, a new opportunity for this new constituency. But it's also new politics, it strikes me, that we have in our country as we watch these results coming in tonight. And there is a long way to go yet. And I think that the era of three-party politics right across the United Kingdom is now with us. That is something that I welcome. I think it is a healthy development, and I think that what we are seeing taking place in terms of the progress of the Liberal Democrats right across the land, in Scotland, in Wales, and right throughout England, is something to celebrate. But tonight, here, locally, to the people who have backed me over these 22 years, I am just grateful. Thank you very much indeed, and I'll carry on doing my very best. Thank you.
Charles Kennedy, leader of the Liberal Democrats, whose vote went up by 14.5%, and a big swing from Labour to the Liberal Democrats there of 11%. And meantime, Oliver Letwin in Dorset, we hear, saved his seat. There was some question earlier on the evening whether he would hold his seat, the shadow Chancellor for the Conservatives. And here's his result, 24,763, majority of 2,461 on a huge turnout, 76%, one of the highest ones we've had. A share 46, 42, 84. And let's just see the change. Just a smidgen up for the Conservatives, a swing to the Conservatives from Labour of 4%. And this is how he spoke in Dorset West after his victory was announced.
Tonight has been a night in which already we've seen a very large number of people in this country indicate that they believe that the time has come for a change of direction. We have yet to see just how significant the gains the Conservative Party makes will be, but it's already clear, I think, that we have persuaded very large numbers of people of the need for a country to be governed by a government that actually delivers on the promises that it makes, that doesn't talk so much and that takes more action, a government that's determined to get better value for money for the taxes that people pay. And I think it's also a tribute to the fact that the Conservative Party has fought a campaign about the issues that matter to the British people. The schools that people send their children to, the hospitals that elderly people have to go to and that the young are born in, the police who have to guard our streets, and the taxes that people pay. These are issues, along with controlled immigration, which the British people are concerned about. They're the issues we've campaigned about. I believe by doing so we have led a large number of people to recognise that the Conservative Party is now a party that is making advances towards the kind of Britain that our people want to see. And I'm proud to have served under Michael Howard's leadership as part of that campaign, and I'm proud also to be able to serve the people of West Dorset as their MP for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Oliver Letwin in Dorset West. Well, let's have a look at how the Labour-Conservative battle has been going with Peter Snow. Peter.
Right, David. Well, the Conservatives successfully holding off the Liberal Democrats there in places like Dorset West and making advances at Labour's expense. But look at the tantalising measure of their performance. Here is where they would like to have got to. A 6.5% swing, turning all these red seats blue here. What's actually happened, though? Well, let's have a look. Let's have a look at the results now. There's the old house, there's the new house. And look at these blue bobs coming up here, these little blue blobs coming up here, well inside Labour territory. Some marginal seats being won, right up to a swing, as you can see, of 5, even 6%. Now, the actual forecast that we have is that most of those ones down the bottom there, the easy, vulnerable ones, will go. That, by the way, is Dumfries and Galloway, which is held in Scotland. Scottish performance rather different to the English performance. But here we have all these seats here forecast to go down to the Tories. The swing is only about 3%. That's the problem. In London, they're making gains beyond the pendulum, but unfortunately for the Tories, they're just not making enough gains in the Midlands and the North, other crucial areas for them, and the South East, outside London, to push that pendulum up here to that critical 6.5% that would mark the end of Mr. Blair's majority, David.
Thanks very much, Peter. Let's just have a look at one or two more results that we've had in. From London, Hammersmith and Fulham, Conservative gain from Labour. I don't know whether we have the figures there. We seem to have got a bit stuck on those figures, but Conservatives gain Hammersmith and Fulham from Labour. Hammersmith generally thought to be Labour, and Conservative generally thought... what am I saying? And Fulham generally thought to be Conservative. And Harwich, the Conservative gain from Labour, and the Dorset West swing we mentioned before, from Labour to Conservative, 4 percentage points. Let's join Jeremy.
Thank you, David. Well, let's talk about the implications of this result, what we know of it so far, for the leaders of your respective parties. Paul Boateng, do you think this accelerates the point at which Tony Blair hands over to Gordon Brown or whoever?
No, I don't. I think what you get listening to Tony Blair, and indeed to Gordon Brown earlier on this evening, is a sense on the part of both men of the historic responsibility that now lies with the Labour Party, this third term, and a real determination to use the momentum that we have developed in office in order to deliver that agenda. And it's one that our manifesto makes clear. It's around combating poverty, it's one around enterprise, and importantly, a vision for the world, which we'll see in the next few months of our joint presidencies, around climate change in Africa. That's a great mission, which both men are committed to.
What about your party, Lord Strathclyde? I mean, you change leaders more frequently than many people change their socks. Are you going to change Michael Howard now, or has he justified his position to take you into the next election?
Well, I've got no idea what Michael Howard himself will personally decide.
No, you must have a view
my
about what
view
you
is that
think.
he should continue. This is a tremendous result. So far, we are winning seats all over the country, including in Wales, where we won a Conservative seat for the first time since 1997. We're winning them in the north of England, and of course, we're doing extremely well in the south. So I hope Michael Howard will stay, and I think that the party will want him to stay and to continue. He, of course, may take a very different view. I hope not. But as far as the Labour Party is concerned...
Hang on, no, I just talk about your party. He can speak for his party. I want the Liberal Democrats. This is about as far as Charles Kennedy could take you. Not to downplay it as an achievement, great achievement, perhaps, historically.
No.
Can he take you much further?
No, absolutely. He advanced at the last election. He's advanced at this election. I don't see any reason why Charles Kennedy can't advance at the election after this. That's what he plans to do. I'm sure that's what the party wants him to do, and that's what we'll start planning to do from tomorrow morning.
Do you seriously think people look at Charles Kennedy and think, there's a future Prime Minister?
I think what people look at Charles Kennedy and say, here's someone we can relate to, here's someone who's not patronising, here's someone who we can trust. And I think that in the next Parliament,
so
as
they
in
don't
the last
look at him
Parliament,
and say there's a future
people
Prime
will
Minister.
carry on turning towards the Liberal Democrats. The proof of the pudding's in the eating. The Conservative vote's barely risen. The Labour Party has had the worst result for a governing party that's remained in office in history. They've got 36% of the vote. That's
they've got a thumping great majority.
It's 36% of the vote. In terms of the overall population of Great Britain, it's less than a quarter who voted for Tony Blair. So it's hardly surprising that he's not triumphalist.
As far as your party's concerned, Lord Strathclyde, why didn't we see very much of almost any other member of the Shadow Cabinet?
Well, I think that there were lots of members of the Shadow Cabinet very much part of the campaign. But remember, Michael Howard has only been leader for 18 months. It was important to establish himself as leading the campaign from the front, which he did. I mean, there is no party leader who had as much energy as Michael Howard. Only a couple of days ago, seeing him on the news, running down
Oh, gosh,
the streets.
shock. Man can run.
No, it was magnificent. And these are the results. The results are we have won.
third successive term
We are winning the seats that we set out to win. We haven't yet gone quite as
Let's get this
far ahead
absolutely
as
straight.
we
What
would
happened
like
was
to.
he did a lot of running around, and the consequence was that he lost for the third time for your party.
It was always going to be a very difficult mountain
So
to
you always
climb.
knew you were going to lose.
No, I don't think so at all. We set out
You
to
thought
fight.
you might win.
We've set out to fight a campaign to win. That's what we have sought to do. That's what we set out to do. On these figures, it may not look as if we have achieved that, but we have won, as I said, in parts of the country that we haven't seen Conservatives in since 1997.
OK, I've got to hand to David Dimbleby. David!
Nothing got about it, Jeremy. You carry
No,
on if
I
you
want
want to.
The nation wants to hear from you, David.
No, the nation prefers to hear from you. But actually what the nation's going to do is go up to Gateshead and just see how our painting is going on, and then I'm going to be speaking to Nicholas Soames. Let's just see how the painting is going on, and we join Sian Williams there.
Well, it's going very well. We're trying to keep up with the results here, and the teams are scurrying about the map. They've stopped scurrying, actually, but you can see how different it looks now to how it looked when you came to us a couple of hours ago, when it was just a red splodge on the northeast, because those Labour seats declaring first, of course, and now multicoloured, including the blue seats in London and the southeast, and the Tories here delighted about that. Lots of people here, lots of the activists who sort of push the envelopes through the letterboxes and pound the pavements, starting with you, because you've had smiles on your faces, even though here you've won nothing.
Well, I think we fought a very good campaign. I think it's gone very positively for us this evening. I think we've surprised quite a few people, particularly in London, and I think it's a sound and ringing endorsement for the way we've conducted ourselves, and very clearly shows that the Conservatives are a party to be taken seriously.
OK, well, I can say some cheers I heard from Labour there, and there's a spraying their little constituencies. We've got, of course, 646 constituencies to do by the end of tonight. How do you think Labour are doing? I mean, if the exit polls are anything to go by, their majority is going to be severely cut.
Yeah, but they're still looking at a majority of about 70, which I think in the third term is something to be proud of. A historic third term, I think, is what we needed.
Can you hear the laughs on the map there as they're spraying? I can smell the aerosol here. Yeah, don't stand too close. Hannah, Liberal Democrats, surprised by how you're doing so far?
I think we're having quite a surprising night. We're doing very well, but we're gaining lots of Labour seats when we thought we'd get lots of the Tory, decapitation seats.
Yeah, what happened to that strategy?
I don't know quite what's happened to that strategy. It doesn't seem to have worked too well, but we've picked up other seats, so it doesn't really matter. We've done very well getting the student vote in Leeds and in Bristol, so I think that's been our plan.
Right, OK, it looks like we need even more of you over there as the results are coming in, so you better get in there, get the results, armed with your spray can, and come out. Robert, how are you doing? Where are you?
I'm over here, Sian, with the paint, and I'm glad to say there's plenty left. We've got a lot more work to do, but let's dive in quickly, because I want to see how people have been getting on. Let me talk to you, because I know you've been involved right from the start. This has been quite hard, even with the numbers, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been really difficult just trying to find out where constituencies are. They have strange names and they don't... It's been fun, though. We've had a really good time.
Let's go down into the difficult bits, down at the bottom of the country there. How are you doing? How are you getting on?
Oh, I'm fine. It's been a bit difficult, but we're managing. It's really good.
You haven't had to do London yet, have you? That's tricky down there.
Yeah, because the spaces are so small, so, it's a bit difficult, but we're managing.
Right, well, I say, we never promised it was going to be high-tech, but they have managed to keep warm. It's not been that clement here down the banks of the river, but they're doing great, and as I said at the beginning, this map is being transformed, and it'll be even more so in a couple of hours' time. Sian?
Thanks very much, Robert. It looks like a bit of an abstract painting going on here. Yeah, we should say, actually, we don't have Northern Ireland, because, of course, the Northern Ireland seats don't declare until Friday afternoon. But do keep coming back to us, see how it goes.
Looks a bit smudged, Sian, which I thought it would smudge.
Everybody's walking over it.
Yeah, well, of course they're walking over it. I long to see London. Anyway, I like the remark about these constituents all with strange names and where are they. You won't find out from that map. Anyway, let's join Mark Mardell, who's at Central London, at Labour's party. Is it a party of celebration?
It's not a celebration at the moment. I think by most people's standard it's a party, but we're told it's a results service. Yes, I've moved from Labour Party headquarters to what I can only refer to as a venue 2, because at the moment we're not allowed to tell you where it is, but there are about 400 people inside here, including celebrities like Eddie Izzard and Chris Evans and Mick Hucknall from Simply Red. Not many politicians at the moment, but quite a few Labour supporters, and I'm told they're not drinking champagne. No champagne. So I asked them, what do you drink when you're not exactly celebrating, but you're quite pleased? Red and white wine and beer, I'm told. Because people aren't sure exactly what sort of majority Labour has. They're pretty sure they've won an overall majority, but we're hearing figures ranging from 40 to 80. At the moment, the Labour Party strategists are saying around 80, but I think that could easily change. So they're not quite sure how hard to celebrate or how chastened to appear.
Mark, I'm interrupting you to go to Welland and Hatfield, where we've got a declaration.
Sarah Louise, Liberal Democrat, 6,318. Johnson, Melanie Jane, the Labour Party candidate, 16,226. Shapps, Grant V, the Conservative Party candidate, 22,100. 22,172, and that the undermentioned Grant V. Shapps has been duly elected to serve as member for the said constituency.
Melanie Johnson, the second ministerial loss of the night. Melanie Johnson, the Health Minister, been the MP here since '97, loses Welland and Hatfield. And we go to Dumfriesshire, Clydesdale and Tweeddale.
Andrew Stewart Wood, Scottish National Party, SNP, 4,075. I hereby declare that David Mundell has been duly elected to serve as the Member of Parliament for the Dumfriesshire, Clydesdale and Tweeddale County constituency.
Conservatives gain Dumfriesshire, Clydesdale and Tweeddale. David Mundell for the Conservatives takes the seat from Sean Marshall for Labour.
Voting for more than one candidate, 14. Writing a mark identifying voter, 6. Unmarked
we'll have the figures for that in a moment. But let's now join Nicholas Soames from the rather curiously named Sussex Mid constituency. Mid what? It doesn't say, but I suppose it's Mid Sussex. Why do they call it Sussex Mid and not Mid Sussex?
It doesn't, David. The only people who call it Sussex Mid are the BBC. It's Mid Sussex.
Oh, I see, right. Well, we'll stick with it because we like to be different. You disappointed by this result?
Yeah, of course.
For the Conservatives?
Sorry?
I said, are you disappointed?
Sorry?
Are you disappointed?
No, I'm not at all disappointed. I think we must be watching different programmes. The last 3 results show Conservative gains. I'm extremely heartened by what I've seen. I think it's going really very well indeed, and I'm full of hope for what it'll look like tomorrow morning.
I only ask you whether you're disappointed because Baroness Thatcher said the figures aren't looking good enough. I'd hoped the results would have looked better on the record of what we've done for the country.
Well, I think she's in Venice, so maybe she's not quite up to date. But I think the results look very good and very encouraging. And certainly, if the reflection, if you look at it up and down the country, I think we have cause to be really very pleased indeed.
She's on a boat in the middle of the Thames, not in Venice.
Ah, well, there we are, from one water city to another.
What, you mean she's still out of touch, you think?
I honestly don't know, but it looks very good to me.
What do you think the future for the party is now? Do you think Michael Howard should remain leader? Lord Strathclyde said he didn't know whether Howard wanted to stay on or not. What do you think?
I very much hope that Michael will stay on. I think he should stay on. In fact, I think it's essential he stays on. I think he's fought a magnificent and heroic campaign. He's shown tremendous fortitude and great endurance. And there's a lot for him to do yet, so I very much hope that he will stay on.
This word, stay on, do you mean stay on and fight the next election for the Conservatives?
Well, I hope he'll stay on as leader of the party. That's up to him, but I hope he'll stay on as leader of our party, yes.
And where do you think the Where do you think the campaign he fought went wrong?
Well, I don't know that it has gone wrong, David. It looks to me as though it's gone rather well. And certainly down here, I think we found a lot of common ground with people here. I've been campaigning, I've been in the Northwest, I've been in the Southwest, I've been all over the shop in the Midlands, and I really have found our campaign to be resonating, and I hope that that effort by Michael and all the other members of our party, voluntary and everyone else, has paid off tonight.
Do you think the immigration policy damaged the Conservatives at all, or was that just Labour and the Liberal Democrats talking about it and complaining that it did? I mean, do you feel in your heart that it was a mistake?
No, I don't feel it was a mistake, and I think it was important, and it's quite clear that it's a subject that it would be very foolish to ignore, and it needs to be resolved, and the asylum and immigration system in this country needs to be fixed. What does matter is that we fought a very broad campaign on a very large number of issues with which we found common ground with an enormous number of people, and that is why we're doing well tonight. Better, I think, than any of you believe we would.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We're watching...
Thank you, David.
Watching the Prime Minister at Trimdon coming out and in considerably better spirits, I think, Andrew, you'd agree, than he was when he left his count an hour or so ago.
He's remarkably swift at cheering himself up. It's been one of his political strengths for a long time. But, you know, it's all about rhythm and direction, and I have to say, a lot of the seats that I went round following the Prime Minister on his visits have now become Conservative or Liberal Democrat seats. And he must be aware that a lot of these people he knows quite well have lost their seats, and I think he has some, you know, big questions about how he conducts the government over the next however long he's there for.
OK, well, let's go with the flow and rejoin Jeremy.
Well, I'm joined now by Oliver Letwin. Oliver Letwin, jolly nice to see you again. Congratulations on winning your seat. Have you been invisible because you've been too busy fighting the seat, or because the leadership were afraid you'd commit another boo-boo about how many billions you might cut off public spending?
Well, a typically charming question, thank you, Jeremy. I've, I think, done about 8 press conferences with Michael Howard, most of which you've attended. If that's invisibility, I'm a Dutchman.
I certainly haven't attended them. Perhaps I should have done.
Oh, I saw you at one of them.
You didn't?
I rather think I might have seen you at 2. I think I did.
Well, let's not argue about this all night. What I was getting at was...
I saw an awful lot of your colleagues at them.
Good. Well, yes, we're all interchangeable, I suppose. What I was getting at was what sort of a fight you'd had down there. I mean, obviously it had tied you up hugely. You were a target seat for the Liberal Democrats. You fought them off. Was it intensely time-consuming, and what sort of... Did you come across any new tactics?
I didn't come across any new tactics. Yes, of course, it's intensely time-consuming. Each day I was up in London for the press conference and broadcasting, and then going back down to the constituency. And I've worn out my feet going house to house. What is time-consuming, of course, is talking to individual constituents. And I've held, I think, 17 public meetings, talking to groups of constituents, and that takes time too. But I'm used to that, because for the last 8 years I've had to spend a lot of time, and I will have to spend a lot of time now over the next 4 years, looking after individual constituents' cases as well.
And at the
it's
end
hard
of it,
work being an MP these days.
Absolutely, and at the end of it, you haven't got a position in government. Now, for how long is it possible for a party which once claimed to be the natural party of government to continue in this endless wilderness of opposition?
Well, it isn't an endless wilderness, Jeremy. We've made already tonight significant gains. I hope and expect that in the remainder of the night we'll make more. And we're clearly now a party on the advance.
All right. Well, look, we've got to leave you just for a second, because
right.
I think in a moment or two we're going to hear from Erewash and the famous Robert Kilroy Silk in his suntan. David?
That'll be very
interesting. We'll hear from Kilroy Silk, but we'll hear from Daisy Sampson. Let's go to Erewash.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
David, thank you very much. As you can see, we're just waiting for the announcement.
On this occasion. I, the undersigned, being the acting returning officer...
Robert Kilroy Silk, he has already said he's very disappointed by this result.
For the Erewash County constituency, held on the 5th day of May 2005, do hereby give notice that the number of votes recorded for each candidate at the said election is as follows. Bishop David Lawrence, The Church of Militant Elvis Party, 116.
Who's in this one?
Blackman Elizabeth Marion, the Labour Party candidate, 22,472. Garnet Martin Charles, Liberal Democrats, 7,073. Graham Sadie Bethany, British National Party, 1,319. Kilroy Silk, Robert, Veritas Party Leader Robert Kilroy Silk, 2,957.
He has probably lost his deposit with that result.
Kingscott Arthur Jeffrey, UK Independence Party, 941. Are You Serious? Official Monster Raven Looney Party, 287. Simmons David Timothy, the Conservative Party candidate, 15,388. There were 194 spoilt ballot papers, but I do hereby declare Elizabeth Marion Blackman to be the elected candidate for the Borough of Elias.
So Labour take this, the story here though, that Robert Kilroy Silk, Veritas, only got just 6% of the vote, just saved his deposit there. Came one ahead of the British National Party, the BNP, who got 2.6%. So Labour hold Erewash, and despite all the huffing and puffing, Robert Kilroy Silk's Veritas came fourth in the poll.
The minority parties generally, I have to say, have done relatively well. British National Party averaging 4.6%, UKIP up a little bit, Greens doing pretty well. 22% in Brighton Pavilion the Green got.
Well, Brighton Pavilion is very green.
It's the
Brighton,
greenest of all.
Yes,
it's the greenest
yes.
place in the world.
Yes.
Well, in Britain anyway. And Respect up to 19.5% in West Ham, where Lindsay German, one of their leading people, if they're allowed to have leading people, was standing.
We're going to Sittingbourne and Sheppey. Rory Kethlen-Jones is there. There's been a recount, and we're just about to get the result, we hope.
I, J.C. Edwards, being the acting returning officer at the parliamentary election for the Sittingbourne and Sheppey constituency, held on the 5th of May 2005, do hereby give notice that the number of votes recorded for
How many
each
recounts
candidate
were there, Rory,
said
there?
election is as follows.
There were 2 recounts.
David Paul Cassidy, Veritas, 192. Stephen Charles Dean, United Kingdom Independence Party, 926. Gordon Henderson, the Conservative Party candidate, 16,972. Jane Elizabeth Nelson, Liberal Democrats, 5,183. Derek Murray Wyatt, the Labour Party candidate, 17,051.
So Labour hold Sittingbourne and Sheppey, and that was a seat the Tories really needed to win, a seat in Kent.
To win it is a seat they had every reason to expect they would win, and they must be amazed as well as disappointed to have lost it.
Rory, what do you make of it?
479.
Well, it's been an incredibly tightly fought battle. Derek Wyatt got the seat in 1997.
Murray Wyatt
he actually
is duly
increased
elected.
his majority against the National Trend in 2001. He had actually given up earlier this evening. I was speaking to him. He was saying he'd already told his constituency workers, his parliamentary workers, that they were going to be made redundant. He was planning a holiday and brushing up his CV, because the first count came up with a Conservative majority of 180.
Ladies
the
and
second one
gentlemen,
reversed
just
that,
before we
put
go,
Labour back in charge with 63, and now we've finally got a Labour majority of, my maths are pretty bad, but I make it 79.
Your maths are pretty good.
Mr. Wyatt,
It is 79. I'm talking with the help of a computer beside me here. Incidentally, Finchley, Labour held on to Finchley, one of the London seats they were hoping to take. Let's have a look at how we're going, because we're coming towards the moment when Labour hit 324 and have their overall majority, can form a government.
We're revising down their majority down to about 66 at the moment. I would say two things about the opposition parties. The first is that the Liberal Democrats are pretty sure they're going to be at 60 or more by the end of the night, which would be the biggest achievement by that part of the political landscape since Lloyd George in 1923 and way back then when the BBC was only a gleam in Lord Reith's eye. So that's a historic moment for them. And of course the Conservatives, although they've done extremely well, are still way, way away from the kind of result they need.
Charles Kennedy up in Ross, Skye and Lochaber, keeping Donald up into the early hours, his wife there at the count. The bookies said that Donald had a better chance of becoming Prime Minister than Charles Kennedy. Do you agree?
Yes.
Does he want to go into politics? Too early to tell. Let's join Peter Snow.
Well, David, here are the headline figures of the projected share of the vote that tell within them some extraordinary stories, don't they? 36% the Labour Party, just 3% ahead of the Tories, but with 36% of the vote, they're winning 55% of the seats. Labour falling away, hemorrhaging to the Liberal Democrats, and the Tories even taking seats from Labour, although with 33%, they'll be exactly where they were in share of the vote in 2001. The Liberal Democrats, down there on 23%, looks pretty small. Only 4% of where they were last time, but taking quite a lot of useful seats and votes from Labour. Now, let's have a look now at what this means in terms of records. We're in amongst the records this time, no doubt about it. Because when you look back in history, and you look back at the winning parties that won an overall majority with a share of the vote as low as this, there's Harold Wilson, 40.2%. He holds the record. In 1974 October, he won an overall majority with 40.2% of the vote. Tony Blair was down to 42% of the vote, winning an overall majority in 2001, not beating Harold Wilson's record. But now look at this. Here we have Tony Blair now winning an overall majority, quite a comfortable one, something like 60 seats or so, with 36.2% of the vote. That is an all-time record, David.
Peter, thank you very much. Well, of course, it does open up the question of how powerful a government can be with that kind of popular backing. I mean, is it demoralising to a Prime Minister?
It must be demoralising, that relatively small percentage of the total adult population behind you, a greatly reduced majority. What do you do to regain momentum? The danger for Labour is that it becomes a relatively timid, reactive government in this third term, particularly if the economy turns against it and finds itself much more at the mercy of events. Looking back,
sure, almost everybody believes it will.
Well, indeed,
and
they will then look back on the massive majorities it had in the first two governments and ask itself the whole time, did we squander that power? Should we have done more with it when we had the chance?
Yet there are also some questions for the Conservatives, because clearly this is a very unpopular government. It's done very badly. 63% of people have voted for a party other than the Labour Party. The records are dreadful from the Conservatives' part. I'm sorry, I'll start again. From the Labour Party's point of view, the Conservatives should have won this election itself in a landslide. Now, part of the problem is,
but hang on, you always said before that the scale of swing needed would be unprecedented. I mean, they needed...
Well, that may be.
But when you say they should have won...
Well, look, if you have a government as unpopular and a Prime Minister as unpopular as Tony Blair has been, and the opposition party, having got 31% in one election, gets 32% in the next, and all it can manage in the one after that is 33%, they must ask themselves what they have to do to make it.
Michael Howard arriving at his count in Folkestone. Kirsty Walk is down there. We'll be able to speak to her, I hope, in a moment. So Michael Howard with this news arriving at his count.
I mean, two questions really for the Conservatives now. The first one is, what are they going to do in terms of remaking the party? Because there are plenty of Conservatives who will say about this result, the trouble is it's just good enough for them to carry on as they have been, and they need a radical change of direction.
He looks very cheerful, doesn't he? As does Sandra, his wife, beside him as they rush in there to the...
Well, he's done enough to put his place in the party's history. They'll be thankful for what he's done. They'll be grateful for this.
But I would go on to argue that...
Well, the party... sorry, just the other point I was going to make very briefly. They've had Iraq to help them this time. They won't have Iraq next time.
OK. Well, we keep an eye on Michael Howard there, but while we're just waiting for him to go into his camp. Well, when you say they've had Iraq to help them, I mean, the messages on Iraq were quite confusing. I mean, I wouldn't have voted in the House of Commons for the measure, but I would have gone to war even if it was illegal.
All right, but they had an unpopular Prime Minister, all this stuff about trust in Tony Blair. It was a very, very strong moment for them. They just won Preseli, Pembrokeshire, which will please Michael Howard as a Welsh-born leader.
He's arriving in the couch to applause from his own supporters there. I don't know how soon it'll be. I don't know whether we can speak to Kirsty. If
I'm here.
Oh, Kirsty, thank goodness. Tell us how long it's going.
Looking down on tables which are completed. The actual count is completed. I suspect the returning officer was actually waiting for Michael Howard and Sandra Howard to arrive. They have done now, and they're surrounded by reporters speaking to activists in the hall. He said his manifesto was he was going to battle for Britain. And Michael Portillo called it his Victor Meldrew manifesto. Well, certainly it's paid off a little in the southeast. But as you said, it's not done enough to put him into Downing Street. And by his own lights, that means he has failed. He said, if people screw up, they'll have to go. So the question is, does he still think that he's screwed up? Or is he going to stay on and try and shape a Conservative Party following this Labour victory?
Well, Kirsty, we'll come back to you in just a moment when the... When you tell us the returning officer is about to declare, but Jeremy has a rather relevant guest with him. Jeremy.
Yes, it's Howard Flight, who was sacked from his job as Deputy Chairman, among other things, at the Conservative Party. Do you think your party would have done better if you'd made bigger promises about tax cuts and the like?
No, but I do think that the big issue of our times is how to sort out the public sector to get a better taxpayer value for citizens, and so it can deliver better without it costing more and more. And I think that's right at the centre of what needs to be achieved in this country.
Was this result then as good as the party could possibly have hoped for?
I think I'm pleased with it. We're on the way back. I hoped it would be better, but it seems to me the Labour Party has nothing to offer. It fought the election on saying it had won the economy well. That's going to go out the window in the next few months. And I think that in terms of the thinking about how to address the issues of this country for the future, we've got it and they haven't.
On that basis, Michael Howard's position as leader is unassailable, isn't it?
Fine, yeah. I mean, I'm not criticising Michael Howard, and he's done a jolly good job fighting this election.
Do you think that you owe any of your supporters or potential supporters something of an apology for the embarrassment you caused the party?
Well, I have apologised, but I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. I was actually defending Michael against Conservatives wanting a more radical programme and saying that politics was the art of the possible. The Times spun it the other way round, and Michael reacted to kill the story, which I understand.
Do you think you were hard done by?
I think it was all most unfortunate and a reaction in haste which was actually incorrect.
But from where we are now, this is as good as it could get.
Yeah, this is, I'm old news, basically. But in terms of the party on the way back, the party I've supported for over 40 years, what needs to be done in this country, we are on the way back, even though, sadly, we're not going to form the next government.
And you'd be happy enough for Michael Howard to take you into the next election?
Absolutely.
Howard Flight, thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Conservatives have gained Preseli, Pembrokeshire from Labour. That's their second gain in Wales, the one I think you were mentioning a moment ago. Tory target number 49 and after Monmouth their best hope in Wales, and they take it very pro-hunting part of Wales and almost English part of Wales at the far end.
But it's often called Little England beyond Wales.
Yes, yes. I'm not sure it's quite that, but that's what they call it. So we haven't heard from Scotland for some time, and we've had various reports about what's been going on there in terms of how the Tories have done. But let's join Sally Magnuson. I don't know why I said you were in Glasgow, because you're in Edinburgh. But Sally, thanks very much for rejoining us. Bring us up to date on Scotland.
It's been an interesting night in Scotland. It's somewhat confusing. The Lib Dems, it's been an unalloyed good night for them, I would say. They've won their top target seats, such as Inverness and Eastern Bartonshire, and most importantly, their share of the vote's gone up to what's probably going to be at the end of the night, 22%, putting them into second place in Scotland under Labour. The SNP, interestingly, they've won their 6 seats that Alex Salmond put his bet on. That's what they said they wanted, but at the same time, their share of the vote has gone down quite dramatically. They're now in 3rd place on share of the vote in Scotland. So what's been happening is that their vote has collapsed in the areas where they weren't actually targeting, and that, of course, has helped the Lib Dems with some of the successes they've had. The Conservatives, as you say, there was a moment tonight when we thought it was going to be a complete wipeout for the Conservatives. They didn't gain the Dumfries and Galloway seat that the shadow Scottish Secretary Peter Duncan was hoping and expected to get, but they've been saved at the last moment by David Mundell in the neighbouring Dumfriesshire constituency, and he is going to be, it looks like, the sole Tory in Scotland at Westminster. So
Anthony,
same position as before, just one Conservative in Scotland.
Anthony wants to ask you something, I think, Sally.
I think I said that's what they're saying.
A straightforward question. The Liberal Democrats have clearly done well, much better than they've done in recent years. The SNP is down. What's the explanation for that? Is it the Scottish people becoming even less enthusiastic, a majority of them, about separation than they used to be? In other words, does it have to do with nationalism, or does it have to do with the SNP?
It's very difficult to say. The SNP would say that the vote that really matters for them is going to be in 2007, and that by winning these 6 seats now, they've positioned themselves for that.
Well, they would say that, wouldn't they?
They would say that in a way, and when Scottish people are asked about independence, they consistently say more of them like the idea of independence than ever vote for the Scottish National Party. The Lib Dems, I think, is a different story there. I think the unease with the war in Iraq has played very strongly in gaining Liberal Democrat support in Scotland, and also their positioning to the left of Labour. That has helped them undoubtedly in a lot of these Scottish seats.
Thanks very much indeed, Sally. I want to go to Charles Clarke, who's going to be speaking in a moment to Jeremy. Let's just see what his result was. Here it is in Norwich South. Labour hold, of course, 15,904. He's back there with a majority of 3,653. The Liberal Democrats in 2nd place, up from 3rd place, pushing the Conservatives into 3rd place. 38%, 29%, 23%.